we're taking an internal FreshRSS instance and sharing it to the world without exposing your home lab.
You ever wanted to securely access your internal apps like Uptime Kuma, Portainer, or Nextcloud from anywhere without exposing your entire home lab to the internet or messing around with port forwarding, if your ISP even lets you? Today, we're building a proper HTTPS reverse proxy using Pangolin, Traefik, Let's Encrypt, and we're going to be deploying a FreshRSS feed to actually aggregate all of our articles, anything that we want to see from Reddit, virtualization how-to, all of these different websites. Howdy folks, Zach Perry back here with 45 Home Lab. In today's video, we're bringing together, as I mentioned, Pangolin, Traefik, Let's Encrypt to securely serve web apps, can't say that 5 times fast, to share out RSS feed using Docker Compose. And instead of dumping everything on the VPS, we're going to be keeping FreshRSS on a VM within my Proxmox server. Before we get started, a large amount of viewers aren't subscribed. If you find this or any of our past videos useful, make sure to hit that subscribe button. So let's walk through how all these pieces fit together. Now, at a high-level overview in today's video, we're going to walk through step-by-step how to take an internal service like FreshRSS running in a VM on Proxmox and expose it securely using Pangolin. So we're going to be using a domain that I've used previously when we deployed Nextcloud called stashcloud.com. Our actual full domain is going to be rss.stashcloud.com. We're going to use a VPS running on Linode that is running Ubuntu 24, and that's where Pangolin and Traefik are going to be hosted. We have Namecheap for our DNS provider for stashcloud.com, Newt as the tunnel for the VPS and my home lab, and a Proxmox VM running FreshRSS via Docker Compose. Now, quick disclaimer before we get too deep. A lot of this was trial and error for me, Googling, ChatGPT, because like a lot of people doing something for the first time, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I'm very comfortable with internal storage, networking, but public-facing reverse proxies are something I treat with a lot of caution because I guess I'm overly paranoid about exposing myself too much on the internet. Anyways, so if you see a spot in this where you would have did something differently, let people in the comments know that, hey, I've done it this way, this is how I have it deployed. That's kind of why I want to do this video in the first place, treat it as a kind of a learning experience for myself and everybody else who views this. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the architecture. At the top, we've got our Namecheap DNS managing stashcloud.com, pointing at a VPS. I'm calling that Pangolin-Hub. This runs Pangolin, obviously. It also runs Traefik with Let's Encrypt using DNS-01 challenge via Namecheap's API. And the last component is the VPS that has Gerbil, which does WireGuard tunnels. And Gerbil is going to be used to manage those WireGuard tunnels and interfaces. Then over a secure tunnel to VPS, there's my home lab, and Proxmox is running on our HL15 here with an AMD EPYC 7452 and 128 gigabytes of RAM with 4 SSDs and a ZFS RAID 10, giving us a great amount of performance and redundancy. And as mentioned, that Newt client that keeps the tunnel open back to Pangolin, so my internal can talk to the Pangolin VPS. So when someone on the internet hits rss.stashcloud.com, so think of Pangolin as a 3-part system. So it's going to have Pangolin Hub, or Pangolin, which we've named Pangolin Hub, which is our VPS/public server. And this is our central controller and reverse proxy. Gerbil is our VPS alongside Pangolin, so that's the WireGuard controller. Sets up, manages, and authenticates those tunnels. And Newt. So that's going to go on our internal system, and that's going to be on our internal home lab or LAN. And then lastly, we have Newt, which is going to be on our actual VM itself. And it's an agent that creates a secure tunnel from your private network to the Pangolin Hub. The DNS sends the user to the VPS. For stashcloud.com, Traefik on the VPS terminates HTTPS using Let's Encrypt certificates. Pangolin checks access rules and decides which backend service should handle the request. Pangolin uses Gerbil's WireGuard access to request the encrypted tunnel. And then on the home lab side, Newt is the WireGuard peer that is actually allowing that access, allowing them to communicate with one another. And then that request finally lands on the FreshRSS VM at 192.168.2 2.4.8080. Now, I already have this general pattern wired up for my other domain, but we're gonna add stashcloud.com and FreshRSS on top of it. So let's start here. Everything begins at DNS. All right, so a few things that we're gonna do first. This is, let's say we already have our VPS already set up. Like I said, I'm using mine on Linode. You can use DigitalOcean, Vultr, whatever. This is starting from that portion there where you would already have that deployed. Now, very, very little resources that are needed for something like this. You can check the documentation for Pangolin to see exactly what's needed. But I mean, we have very little going on here. So free-h, we have about 512 megs of memory here. We don't have much at all. Our actual CPU, I think we have 1 core maybe, and then like 10 or 25 gigs of storage. But let's actually go in and deploy it now. So what we did here, because I didn't want to actually blow out the one that I have working and have to risk it not coming back up again, what I have running over here is essentially our VPS, kind of just mirroring what I'd done on the VPS here in a VM. So let's bring this up. Yeah, there we go. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is actually get the quick install guide up from Pangolin. So we will go in, we're gonna choose our server. They even have something on complete VPS guide, which is very helpful. I use that myself. And DNS networking. So before installing Pangolin, ensure you set up your DNS for your domains and open the required ports on your firewall. They also have a guide on that. We won't get into that today there because it's going to be different for everybody. But first thing that we're going to do is, and this is also assuming that VPS has Docker Compose, and all those components installed there. But first thing we're going to do is curl down this getinstaller.sh. So if we go back to our Pangolin here and make things a little bit easier, do this and this. There we go. All right, so we will curl this down. And it's gonna do all there. Then we're gonna do our installer. And what I did was I created a directory in OPT called Pangolin. So I am CD'd into that, and now everything will be in that directory for me. So our base configuration, we want to do our domain. So we have stashcloud.com, and then it'll pick up the pangolin.stashcloud.com. Just default, it'll give it that subdomain. Then we'll do a here, so 45.hl. Now, this is just a dummy email there. You'd usually typically want to use one that you have connected with a domain, Google admin, etc. But we'll put that in because if we don't, our actual let's encrypt portion will fail for us. And do you want to allow Gerbil to use your tunnel connections? Of course. Our email config, so we'll leave that off for now. And IPv6 capable. Default is yes, I'm gonna go no. Do you want to download the MaxMind GeoLi 2 database for geoblocking functionality? We'll do the default yes, so we'll go through all of that. And then finally, do you want to start and install all the containers? Yes, and then we choose if we want to use Docker Podman, either fine, whatever your flavor is. So I'm going to do Docker, and I'll start pulling down Pangolin, Traefik, Gerbil, and that'll take a moment there. So what I'll do for now is while this goes through, because it does take a few minutes depending on your internet connection, your VPS, how you have it set up, but we'll go over to our actual Pangolin that we have set up already, and we'll see what that process kind of looks like here. All right, there we go. So when this actually all completes and everything, you'll do the initial setup. So just giving it an admin, giving it like any initial setup you'll do for a Docker container. But once you're in, you'll be met with this. You have to give it an actual, what do you call it now? A site. So once we go in, let's go here, server admin. We can see we already have our home lab added here. So let's just do it again and see what that whole process looks like. So it's going to give it a site address here, so we can leave that as is. We will call this FreshRSS homelab. And then we're going to do a Newt tunnel here. Then it will give us this. So your Newt ID and your secret key, I am showing these off, but this is going to be wiped out after this video here. So that is all right. But let's do save your credentials. So we're going to save that over. We choose our actual way that we want to install Newt, which is a big fan of this, that you just click what you want. It gives you it all here. And then it's going to give you your ID secret. Your Docker container is right there. So we will go ahead and copy that. And then once we actually go in, and we'll take a look at our home lab here. Now we'll do Docker PS, and we can see that we have our Newt set up right here using port 2112. And from there, once we have that, we would go to resources. So we can see we have FreshRSS here already. This is using my other domain. So what we would do is, if we want to add another one here, let's say our stash cloud, we would just go RSS, keep it simple. We'll do HTTPS resource, our subdomain RSS, and then our targets. So when we do our targets, this is going to be the IP and everything of the system there. So we're going to do homelab, keep it as HTTP here, but we'll put our IP in here, 2.168.2.4 and port. So let's see, what does our FreshRSS use again? 8081. So that's what we would put in here. And we can leave the rest of the stuff as default there. Now, when it comes into all that, so 2.4 homelab, RSS homelab, that is all looking fine there. And then we can just create that resource. So now that we have that, we go down, custom header or TLS. So we'll enable SSL because we want everything to be secure, and from a, like I said, overly paranoid about sharing that anything internal publicly facing. And then we can just go through, and I think we are good from here to share that out. So we'll save our settings. One other thing I should mention as well, the home lab that we have set up here. So let's just edit that one real quick. So quick aside there. So we go to our resources and we have our RSS here. So we have the 2.4 there. Now, some people probably already mentioned this in the comments or thinking about it right now, but I left the IP when we added that site as 0. Now, don't want to do that because this is essentially going to be your broadcast there. So we would give it a name, and let's say we want to do it as .10. So everything stays the same from what I did previously, except you're going to want to do that site address when you initially create it as .10. Now, when we have that, we'll go in and we can take a look at our resources here. We can see it's protected. The resources here, HTTPS, everything's looking all right. So from there, let me just reference my notes real quick. Okay, so we have our installer done. Next thing is to do the Traefik configuration. So we're going back into our VM here, and this is our home lab that has our FreshRSS on it. So let's go into cd/opt/pangolin. Yeah, we'll run the Pangolin installer here. That's all been done. Docker PS, everything is up there. And then we're going to want to actually configure Traefik that is on our VPS. So we'll SSH into that, and you can see here. So we'll go to cd/opt pangolin config cd Traefik ls, and you see we have our dynamic config and our Traefik config. And what we're going to do is our Traefik config here. And we'll count that file. So this will all be pretty standard there. It'll already be in the config.yaml, but the only things that I really changed here was the delay before checks. I found that I was running into an error where the SSL certs, it was showing insecure or not secure in the browser, but it was saying that it wasn't using the Traefik default cert, which is what we want, but it was just kind of a weird quirk there. So I increase that to 300 seconds, restart the container, and then that seemed to do the trick there. But we have our email, our storage, a lot of the stuff, like I said, will be default here. So you're gonna enter just your basic own information. And then you're gonna have an opt/pangolin.env. This is where we would head over into our Namecheap UI. So we'll head over to there and let's get that up. Actually, we won't head into it, I'll just describe it. So from this part here, we would go to our opt/pangolin.env, and this is going to have our actual API user and API key. Now, for Namecheap, all you would do is go into your account, you would go to advanced, and then you would enable that API access. You would whitelist your IP, so it would be that .10 that we added when we created the site, and then we would add the actual Pangolin instance itself. From there, it will give us a user, which is going to be the user you signed into Namecheap with, and it'll give you that API key, and you'll put that in your .m file. Now, I'm not gonna show that here because API keys, treat them like passwords, don't share them out. Now, from there, all we would do is restart the stack, and let's see what we have here. So if we do cd/opt/pangolin, and then docker compose restart, and Pangolin. There we go. And that is restarting there. So what we've done so far, we've set up Pangolin, our VPS, we have our resource, our site set up, then we have a resource there for RSS that is tied back to our actual homelab instance. Then we set up Let's Encrypt, and from there, we can actually go in, we can start testing to see if it is even accessible externally, or if there's any errors in general here. So what we'll do is we're going to access from internally here, because this is actually my home lab at home. Let's actually take a look here, and we have our previous domain set up for FreshRSS. Of course, during filming, gonna run into technical issues there.
No, God, please, no, no!
So I don't wanna keep Joe here for another 3 hours while I try to set this up, but let's go through the actual checks here and make sure that everything is working for us. So if we do dig and then we do FreshRSS, we'll use this in place of our rss.stash cloud. So this one I know is working. Watch it not work now, even though I tested it 20 minutes ago. So we're gonna do FreshRSS.perilab.io, and we can see here, so got an answer, and we can see it is solving to an IP, that's all good there. Then what we are going to do next is we will do a curl-vk, and then we want to actually check SSL here, so FreshRSS issuer here, so we'll do a curl-vk pangolin.perilab.io, and then press enter here, and we should see it actually spit out our actual domain here and what it's using. So other thing we can check here is to first try going to our FreshRSS instance. As you can see here, we're prompted with an auth screen from Pangolin. That's to be expected because that's how I had set this up. And let's see, so we will do, okay, and then it'll prompt us with our FreshRSS here. So once we actually log in, we'll go to our user that we had made before. So we're gonna do this, and then okay, and we'll take a look there. We can see that we already have my instance here. It's already scraping a bunch of stuff, and if you'd like to see a video on FreshRSS, how to set it up here to scrape for certain websites, RSS feeds, let me know in the comments there. But one other thing that we'll check, so we can see here that our connection is secure. We can check our actual common name, our issued by, all that good stuff here, so we know that it is secure. So to recap what we did, we have our FreshRSS.perilab.io, which we had to make a slight pivot for, through a VPS running Pangolin and Traefik over a Newt tunnel to a Dockerized FreshRSS VM in my Proxmox homelab. And if you're starting from scratch, the rough order is enable the Namecheap API, whitelist your VPS, add DNS records in Namecheap for Pangolin and RSS, install Pangolin on the VPS, configure Traefik for Let's Encrypt using the Namecheap DNS-01 challenge, create a site in Pangolin and Newt in your home lab, spin up a small VM for Proxmox and deploy FreshRSS using Docker Compose, add Pangolin HTTPS resource for the actual domain pointing to that VM, let Traefik issue the cert, and from here adding more apps is mostly rinse and repeat. New VM or container in the lab, point Pangolin at it, give it a subdomain under your domain, and if this was helpful, let me know in the comments if you want to see some of our other recent videos, setting up Proxmenu X, Pulse for monitoring Proxmox. All that will be in the description below, or you can click here, whatever. If you want to see everything we have on offer, head on over to store.45homelab.com. Our socials are in the description below. And this video, I'm sure there's going to be one or two pieces that didn't make it to the final cut because I may have glossed over them there. I'll put a full link to the guide that I referenced myself in the description below, so you can reference that. And so with all that said, if you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like, maybe subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I'm Zach Perry. See you in the next one. You ever want to securely access your internal apps like Uptime Kuma, Potano, or Nextcloud? Right there. Beauty. That's fine. It's just that's my laptop. It'll hold a charge. I got a ThinkPad here. It's got 2 batteries in it. We're good for hours. There's like 6% left on it.